Welcome back, my friends, to another Saturday night live stream. Tonight, we'll take a look at some recent news from Arcade1up that just might mean the rumors of their demise have been greatly exaggerated. We will also take a look at a conversation from some of my favorite retro game YouTubers and current owners of the the SoCal Gaming Expo as they discuss the popularity of arcades, Arcade1up, Unico, and pinball. So, grab your favorite beverage, sit back, and let's get into it. Alrighty, folks. And just going to take a minute to give a shout out to those of you in the chat. I see Jason Little Alien has joined us. Biggie Fries, thanks for dropping by. And Jim the Pacers fan back in the house. So, I don't know if you guys have seen the latest news, but I was creeping around Arcade1up's Facebook, looking at, or not Facebook, their LinkedIn, and caught some interesting information. So I thought we'd take a look, talk about it, and then we'll jump into, like I said, a discussions from some of my favorite YouTubers. And really, these guys are retro gaming royalty, I think. So we'll take a look at that right after we discuss Arcade1up. So let's just jump into it. So as the title said, right, PlayStation or Nintendo, PlayStation, Xbox, and Arcade1up. That's right. So here's the latest, folks. Arcade1up has climbed the list of largest brands in gaming hardware. Remarkable growth and innovation have led to industry recognition for Arcade1up, with the Infinity Game Board credited as a core driver of the company's success. So there you have it. It is not the death of Arcade1up. If anything, they are beginning to become a powerhouse, ranked in the top four companies in all gaming hardware last year. So from this is from the press release from Arcade1up. It says, an extraordinary achievement. Arcade1up, named Best of CES in 2022 and 2023, has become the fourth largest brand in gaming hardware, according to NPD Group 2023 report. So this NPD Group, for those who aren't aware, they do produce the list of top purchased games, top used games, top subscription service, top hardware, top accessories. This is the industry group that console gamers and console game companies and soft game developers really look at as the de facto measure for how they're doing. This report marks a significant milestone in Arcade1up's journey. Just 5 years since its inception, the company has risen rapidly in the ranks, a feat attributed largely to its innovative product line, particularly the Infinity Game Board, right? Not Arcade1up's, or not the arcade games, not Pac-Man, not Star Wars, not MVC2, not Mortal Kombat. Nope, it's the Infinity Game Board. This achievement underscores Arcade1up's commitment to refining or redefining the gaming experience with products that seamlessly integrate digital achievements with traditional gaming. The Infinity Game Board, a pioneer in hybrid gaming, has played a crucial role in this success. The product has captured gamers' imaginations worldwide, featuring an 18.5-inch HD touchscreen, responsive tactile feedback, and a library of over 100 board games and activities. As the gaming industry evolves, the board game market is experiencing a compound annual growth rate of 3.27% from 2022 to 2028. Arcade One Up continues to be at the forefront of how gaming is experienced at home and globally. The Arcade One Up team is looking forward to continuing to reinvent, reimagine, and innovate retro gaming in 2024. So, as you can see, it the Infinity Game Board is really become the centerpiece of Arcade One Up's product line. If you've noticed, if you follow this company on Instagram, on TikTok, you will notice at a minimum every other promotional video that they put out is about the Infinity Game Board. Their video production on the Infinity Game Board, we've talked about in the past, is significantly higher than what they give their arcades. The arcade products generally get somebody stick a camera in front of them in a hallway somewhere and do a quick talk where they go on location, they do editing, they do production value on this Infinity Game Board. They've obviously been working with various celebrities to promote the Infinity Game Board, whether that is Kanye or some of these other YouTubers, um, or other influencers that, most likely TikTokers that none of us old men really know. But um, it is interesting. And so here, David McIntosh, the senior vice president of brand and communication, is quoted as saying, being recognized as one of the top brands in gaming hardware is a proud moment for us. The Infinity Game Board and table has been a game changer, literally and figuratively, in our industry. One of the things David shared on his Twitter, on LinkedIn, he said, today Arcade One Up announced that it has become the fourth biggest brand in gaming hardware. For context, this brand didn't exist 5 years ago. This February marks 6 years that David's had the pleasure of working alongside some of the greatest minds and people in the industry. As a gamer, this accolade cannot go uncelebrated. Big props to the team and to all of our partners who helped make this dream a reality. Arcade One Up, this is an interesting stat here, if true. Arcade One Up sold more arcades in the last 5 years than all other arcades combined in the 80s, 90s, and 2000. And of course, in addition, recently launched the world's first digital game board console. To the big three who have been dominating this sector for quite some time, game on. So, yeah, Zero Redux, thanks for dropping by. And Jason says here, how many $1,000 game tables and $500 game boards could they have sold to make them a top brand in gaming hardware? According to the quote, he's ignoring the one-up cabinets. And who's recognizing them? I had to step away. So that's NPD Group is the one that produces, Jason. They produce they do monthly and annual report on video game markets, whether that's console hardware, accessories, video games, including Steam and video game subscription services. They rank all those and monitor all those sales every month. C North, thanks for joining us. And I had no idea it was Jason's birthday. Happy birthday, my man. The greatest moderator in the industry. Hope it's been a good one. Yeah, so Jason, I hope that answered your question. NPD Group is pretty much the de facto industry standard. Now, keep in mind, I looked high and low to find this report. Of course, you have to purchase it. So unless NPD Group and their parent company actually decides to release it, you can't just access it without a subscription to their marketing service or their research service. But what comes forth, right? Does that mean they're nipping at the heels of Xbox, or does that mean they're millions and millions and millions of dollars behind Xbox? It's hard to say. But it sounds like, it's probably ranked alongside consoles, being that it is a system where you can download and install all these board games. Chizcom, by the way, is the or no, that's David McIntosh, former employer. I'm drawing a blank on the company that puts out the NPD stuff. But so but still to be up there, that means they're ahead of like all kinds of other hardware manufacturers, whether that be somebody like Analog, Hyperkin, Steam Deck, right? That means they've sold more Infinity game tables primarily. And yes, they included the arcade cabinets in there, but clearly they're pushing this Infinity game table as their big success for the year. And um that means they've beat Valve with the Steam Deck. It means they've beat Facebook with the Meta Quest 2 and Meta Quest 3. That's a pretty remarkable achievement considering uh, both PlayStation, it really led the way this year with the PS5, selling more than anybody else, and still Nintendo just killing it with the Switch. Xbox sales I know have been lackluster, but still, I mean, for Arcade1up to be up in the top 4, beating out Steam Deck with all the popularity it's gotten, and some of these other companies that clearly are selling a lot of their hardware, it's pretty remarkable. So I think it's pretty safe to say that uh, Arcade1up probably isn't dead. Unfortunately, what that means is they are also not really interested in arcades anymore. It's clear their focus is the game board. I think they're paying some arcades, right? X-Men 97 and is an example of that, but we joke that it is now game board one up or board game one up, and I think we're seeing evidence here and from the mouth of Arcade1up that that's true. But let's not just focus on the SVP or the senior vice president of brand and communications. Let's take a look at what interim CEO Dora DeVere said. She says the global gaming market is witnessing unprecedented growth, projected to reach 665.77 billion by 2030. Our rise in the hardware sector is reflective of our innovation and commitment to fun. Now, pretty vague. And by the way, this last couple days is the first time that Miss DeVere has updated her title on LinkedIn. So recently, she is now officially listed out there as interim CEO of Tastemakers, and she is still the chief financial officer and operating officer of Arcade1up. So we knew she had been named interim along with their CTO from Cyrus, and it now looks like maybe she is the sole interim CEO at this point. But again, really talking about really focusing on their hardware sales and specifically the Infinity game table. And here she says the global gaming market. I find that wording interesting because she doesn't say video gaming market. And earlier they were talking about board games specifically and the growth around board games. So I have to wonder here if they are combining video games and board games, or if this literally is just a comment specifically about the board game industry, which would certainly reflect a change in direction for the company. So we know last year they threw two products at the wall that they were hoping would help drive revenue to the company, that being the Infinity Game Board and the Wheel of Fortune Casino-cade. Some of the big dogs in the home arcade space, Michael B. and others, wished they would sell a lot of casino-cades so that they could afford to bring us more arcades. Well, it looks like what they're selling a lot of is Infinity game boards. So as we are 1 quarter into 2024 and the only cab we've seen is a reskin of MVC2, you have to wonder if the success of the Infinity Game Board is going to do anything for the home arcade community. The other thing I wanted to share is this is probably the first time I've noticed Arcade1up doing this, but they actually have a brand strategy for the first time. So clearly they're pushing their X-Men 97 MVC2, and they've gone the extra mile of uniting their marketing across various social media groups and sites. And here you see they've updated their banner on LinkedIn with the push for the X-Men 97, which can be pre-ordered. I also noted on here, it says they are currently hiring in their Miami office. So any of you in Miami that want to go work for Tastemakers and Arcade1up, there you go. Hit them up. I couldn't find a list of current jobs they're hiring for, but it does say they're hiring, which is a stark contrast to the last couple of years. Next up is another big change in the company. Their vice president of sales has stepped down and joined Roku. And really, like, if you look at his title at Roku, it's senior national account manager. That seems to be a step backwards from vice president of sales for Arcade1up. So read what you will into that. When Chris about a year ago, Chris noted on his LinkedIn, he said he was very proud to work for a company that has the ability to attract top tier talent in the consumer electronics business. It's even more exciting being charged to lead our team here at Arcade1up. Together with all our suppliers, Arcade1up's award winning teams introduced an entirely new revenue and profit stream for our valued retail partners, again, who Arcade1up really values. We brought decades of retro fun back into the business and now accessible for all homes in the US and global markets. Welcome aboard. That was 1 year ago, and here we are nearly 1 year later, or 1 year to the day. He says he's happy to share that he's starting a new position as senior national account manager for Roku. Pretty interesting that Chris is out at Arcade1up. So let's talk about Arcade1up as a business and specifically arcades. Clearly they're having success with the Infinity game table, and that is driving their current direction. Bad for us. But what's behind that, right? And I think we all know there's been massive failures recently, whether that's NFL Blitz with the massive over order and then failure to deliver the online play on time, or MVC2, which didn't get online play for over 6 months, or whether that was the debacle with Killer Instinct and releasing the 3/4 scale cab and at the same time announcing a Pro would be coming, which really harpooned sales. And then, of course, when the Pro did come, there was not much really Pro about it, so it didn't sell well. Clearly, they've made major missteps, and I think we've touched on this briefly, but here is another major misstep. These are pictures from their arcade, and it is this was announced 2 years ago. I think this was in 2022. Tastemakers LLC, Arcade1up, the leader in home retro gaming entertainment, announced a multi-year partnership with the Miami Dolphins designed to elevate the in-game experience at Hard Rock Stadium. As part of the unique agreement, fans will have the opportunity to experience the Arcade1up Game Lounge, a retro arcade experience known to be the first of its kind in an NFL stadium. And so I wanted to show pictures here from that launch a couple years ago. Many of you have probably seen these, but I wanted to point out some things, right? This is in an NFL stadium, and I realized they didn't really have an NFL they didn't have Blitz when this launched, but it is pretty interesting that the art they show has basketball in an NFL stadium. Of all the things you could put up there, they put basketball. I also wanted to note here some interesting things. I believe this is, all right, I jumped the gun, clicked on the wrong thing. Here we go. Let's see. This. I believe this right here, and That's not really doing anything. Let's grab the pen. This right here, I believe that's Dora. That is their new interim CEO. Of course, we all know Scott right here, who was ousted last year, along with our buddy John D, who is whoop, right here. That was some horrible circling. And then, of course, here's our buddy Cyrus right here over over this direction. Boy, it's hard to run this little thing with a mouse. Anyway, this is the group celebrating. Why was this? I would argue this is also another giant disaster from Arcade1up. And why is that? It's not that it's not cool, not that it's not great for the fans. It's that it is extremely expensive. Speaking from experience, I think I mentioned it before, but I used to own my own company for years. It was a regional tech company, and I did business with the Royals here in Kansas City, and the Royals are nowhere near uh, the marketing capabilities of an NFL team. I mean, you can take numbers from the NFL side of things and like 10x at what an MLB team might charge. So when I was doing business with them, just to have a tiny sign, and when I say this, like, you know, it's a sign that's maybe 4 or 5 feet wide, 2 or 3 feet in tall, hanging in the concourse. So as people are walking through the concourse to get food or on their way to their seats, in and out of the stadium, they would walk by these or under these signs. Those were incredibly expensive. We're talking like 20 at the for a small sign like that, like $25,000 a month. Ridiculous, right? And as you moved up, right, if you wanted signage in the outfield or anything like that, you're talking like now you're getting into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you're trying to be the official anything, you're now jumping up into the, half a million to a million range, depending on if you want exclusivity, how long you're going to do it. And so it gets astronomically expensive. So now you're going further. This is in an NFL stadium. This is a whole built out area in the Miami stadium where anybody can walk by, come and play these games. The cost to do this has to be, you know, multiple $1 million a year, multiple. Maybe upwards of 5, I would imagine. Could be a little, you could back that off. Maybe it's 3 million. It's not going to be cheap. I mean, you think about the space that this is taking up. Uh, I wish some of the pictures were better so that I could tell, like, looks like drop ceilings and stuff. So I don't know that this is along the concourse. Maybe this is in a building outside the stadium. Uh, it, it's just interesting. If you assume it's along the concourse where people could exit and go into, which I would think, um, yeah, this would be in the multiple millions of dollars. If it's off to the side, maybe it's not as much. But then you're talking multiple years. So at that, it's at least 3, which means they're still saddled with paying this. I would imagine with all the marketing that they've done, like clearly the imagery and things like that in this area, they're probably planning longer than 3 years. So my guess is it may have been as much as 5. Don't know. Just guesstimating. But then you have to ask yourself, what value could this possibly bring? Do you think they're going to get back, 9-10 million dollars in value from this instant or this marketing campaign? Uh, yeah, I think I believe it definitely was there through this football season. Goofy foot, and I would imagine it's still there next year. But it'll be interesting to find out from somebody in the area if they go. But there's no way they got $10 million worth of value out of this setup. It's fine for branding, marketing, but I just don't see an ROI here. It was just more of look how big and how we are now. Now, if they were smart, they took their venture capital money that they got, the loans that they took in 20, what was that, 2020, 2021, and they just paid for this outright for however many years, and it's not sitting on their balance sheet. Now, they probably didn't do that because that's not really how you're supposed to do those things. You don't want to pay it all up front, but they would have had the money to pay it up front. But it's interesting. So I bring this up just as a one of the other missteps, along as those 5 cabs, really getting them bogged into this thing is probably another reason why, um, leading into why John D and Scott may not be around anymore. It's decisions like this, in my opinion, that didn't drive sales really, right? It's a nice feather in your cap. It's fun to make yourself feel good that you've got this in there, but it's not really going to drive sales. And of course, you saw the last thing here. The one thing we've seen right recently, our new special stool that's out for pre-order, which I think we've all talked about probably at this stage. What was that dropped Friday morning, I think. So yeah, yippee, a stool. And of course, here's our X-Men 97 cab. So that's the gist. Pretty interesting, pretty ridiculous in my opinion. But I did want to share that all with you. I found it interesting, the hardware sales, um, that they're reaching that scale, that they're up there with the Nintendos and the Sonys, and pretty interesting stuff. Yeah. It's so yeah, so what what did you guys think about the fact that they're now 4th in sales, but largely because of um largely because of the Infinity game board. And so, I'm going to take a minute here to jump in some of these chats while I was going through that little spiel. The Thumper Squid's with us. And yeah, I actually just watched that, Thumper, the Raw Thrills TMNT game. And it could very well be, I think he's mentioned in the past, and we all saw on the link list that the Shredder's Revenge Cab was on there as a code name for another title, and to throw people off on what the real title was. And could that real title have actually been Wrath of the Mutants? Sure sounds like Michael B may have known or may know. He clearly mentioned that in his video today, that he really thinks this is likely to come out. Uh, I will say, if it does, they better make it in HD and it better look like the arcade, because if they do to it what they do to Fast and Furious, where it's downgraded and, to whatever that is, 480p, it's definitely not HD. And the textures load crappy, that game's going to be a miserable disaster. Clearly that takes a higher power of PCB, and it's full HD. And while Raw Thrills can quote unquote work miracles by downgrading their game, I don't know if consumers would be happy with that. Says David McIntosh, quote on the screen as being choosy. The group recognizing them is indeed including the A1up cabinets. They absolutely are. They are including all hardware that were sold in 2023. And clearly they blew out, we know from Kokum, they blew out tons and tons and tons of cabinets last year at discount prices. But I do think, when Arcade1up is specifically focusing in their press release announcing the thing about the Infinity game board, and they don't mention the arcade cabinets at all, we can pretty much derive that that is what drove their sales. And so they're going to continue to push that. You have to think that that product holds a lot more value to them long term. These arcade games that they sell, that we all buy, the arcade cabinets are a one and done sale. They sell it to you once, you get the cabinet and you're done, right? They may send you updates. That's just a cost driver. They have to continue to produce the updates to the games, they have to continue to support them. Whereas the Infinity Game Table, that's just a console and a gateway into your house, right? They give you the games that come with it, and then they're hoping to upsell you by selling you one of the other 50 board games that are available on that tool. So for them, the upside on the Infinity game board is much higher. And we also know that let's face it, that tablet that they're using, there's not much cost to that. I think that tablet can be priced out like at scale for well under $50. And of course, then they slap some protective stuff on it, but um, it's not a very expensive thing to put together. And they dump it out there at $500, and then they turn around and can sell you a bunch of $5 and $10 downloads. It's a cash cow. And Jason says it's not my birthday until May. Well, from now on, March 2nd will always be known as Jason's birthday, whether he likes it or not. And Thor, KC is in the house, fellow Kansas Cityan. Yep, talking about the Jason's talking to Thumper about the TMNT Wrath of Mutants. And then Jim, the Pacers fan, says, "Would my arcade be on this list?" Oh, I bet it would, but it's probably way down there simply because their price points are pretty low, right? So, though admittedly that Atari thing that's in Kohl's and everywhere else, clearly that's sold quite a bit. I've seen a lot of people talking about it on YouTube. A lot of people bought that. Um, I think it's under $100, but it seemed to be pretty popular, being in Costco and Kohl's and Target, and it definitely got a lot of chatter. Um, Jason's celebrating every holiday right now. And of course, Thumper nails it. He already has a tablet. C North says, "Rip one up." Let's see. And then Carl O says, "Hola, hola, Carl. Nice to see you." And then let's see here. Zero says, "Seemed like a good idea at the time." Yeah, I'm sure it did. They were riding high when they purchased the place in Miami. Sales were through the roof. They had flush with cash. I'm sure it was really felt good, right? But then lockdowns ended and people had to go back to work and sales slowed, and they made huge missteps with overorders, and suddenly a giant multi-million-dollar per year thing probably didn't stick around. That's it. Reminds me, I should drop into the AMA and ask John about specifically about that endeavor. He probably can't talk about the cost per se, and my cost basis is based on major league teams here in Kansas City. So I would assume they're even more expensive in Miami, but I could be wrong. I wonder if the lounge is still there. Zero, my understanding, it is indeed still there. Let's see. And Thor says, "Didn't realize you're also here in Kansas City." I am. I'm on the south side, my friend, but I work on the north side, so I'm all over town. And then Gooffoot says, "Small world, Thor." And he does say it's all still there. And Thor KC says, "It looks like it could be line C areas on club level." It does look like that. It reminds me of um, if you're familiar with at Arrowhead, there used to be a company in town, and they got acquired a couple years ago, called Alexander Open Systems, or AOS. They were a big tech contracting company, sold hardware, services, all that kinds of stuff. I used to do business with them in a few different companies, but they had for a while had a major setup like that in Arrowhead Stadium, and they had taken a a huge section of the concourse, and when Arrowhead was redesigned, it has some areas that are um, more like club level, not fully, right? Because you can only renovate Arrowhead so much, but they that have that kind of like wood floor feel and a little more internally upscale. But specifically, their setup reminds me of like the bar area over at Sprint Center or T-Mobile Center, whatever it is today, um, which is like this VIP area where they have a big bar area set up for even when they have, when drinking was banned at NCAA events, you could go there and actually get a drink and still see what was going on. But really reminds me of that area. So it could be up on the club level. If it's not on the club level, it's even more useless, right? Because only the people with suites and club level seatings can see it. If you've never been to that stadium, Thor, it's almost exactly like Arrowhead. It's a little more square, but the layout, and I believe the same exact company designed it, is very similar to Arrowhead. The Zero says there's no real one-up footprint other than the machines themselves. Maybe they cut a really good deal. Certainly the machines are in there. Think of that. Think of those machines, right? Um, in the traffic in an NFL stadium and the kind of use those things and beating those things must get. People with their beers and their food. Makes you wonder if A1up has to go in there and replace them after every game or every few games. But keep in mind, an NFL stadium, what? You're getting 10 games a year out of that. So open for 4 hours, 1 day a week, 10 weeks out of the year, and yet you're paying multiple millions of dollars for that. Mm. Yeah, you be the judge. Says at least they could test the new control boards without plexiglass. Indeed, indeed, indeed. Paul says make it stop. Breaking news. LOL. Sad. Do you have any stools? I don't understand why they are so expensive. They are outrageously expensive. I was hoping to pick up a Broncos stool when they released all the different teams with Blitz, and there was no way I'm paying what they're trying to get for that thing. I have one stool. I think I have the Killer Instinct stool that because it came with the KI when it was blown out for $1.99. Those stools are fine. They're uncomfortable. They're not exactly high quality, and boy, they're proud of them. And heaven forbid if you get one with the back. I think those are like, throw another 100 on it. I think they're like $200 for one with the back, or at least 169. Just insanely expensive. Says I missed the beginning. Did A1up claim the Infinity board is what's keeping lots on? Yes. So they said that they're number 4 in hardware sales thanks to the Infinity game board specifically. They said it led the way in sales in 2023. It's a stool, all right. Yep, it's the solid black light absorbing stool. That would be more interesting than whatever we're gonna get on that. I wonder on the stool if the Disney Plus cartoon is taking the character of Changeling, or renamed in the original to Morph. And they're taking that character who's a shapeshifter, right? I wonder if they'll make the stool his face. And the stool is just Morph who morphed into your stool so you can sit on his face. Paul Miniman says I have the full size 32-inch Infinity game table and it sits and collects dust. The Infinity game board phase will be short-lived. You can't sell more than one to a family. I totally agree. It's also pretty small, the Infinity game board. The Infinity game table makes more sense size-wise. I still don't understand card games on the thing. I realize they give you some little plastic shields to hide your cards, but let's be realistic. That's ridiculous. I'll also say the thing, $500 for the Infinity game board and $1,000 for the Infinity game table. What does Uno cost? $5. What does Battleship cost? $15. Like, it's a lot of money for a lot of games you're probably never going to play just so you can get a handful that you could have bought for much, much less. Of course, you can't play them on a TV screen, but who cares? Um, Brooklyn Menace in the house. And of course, the Cornercade dropping by.
Let's go.
And C North says, CC, this is a library. Tab alone costs 600. That is correct. And then Johnny Blaze, thanks for dropping by. Says, good evening, everyone. And Jim the Pacers, have you checked out ThinkUp's website? I have not. I've looked at the their Kickstarter. Interesting. I saw D Love said that they reached their goal this morning, which quite frankly, I was surprised they didn't reach it last night on Super Game Room Dudes. I think they would have only needed 2 sales. I would have thought some of the shilling for that thing on there would have pushed it over just out of the number of people watching. Surely two might have been interested in that, but yeah, not for me. Thor KC says the Infinity game table is a great idea that will probably catch on as Apple finds a way to steal it. Double the price. Thor says, yes, I used to work in guest services at the Rose Garden in Portland. Now I live just a couple miles east of Arrowhead. Cool. Let's see. Cornercade says, Paul, can I have the Infinity game board? Let's see. He says, kids and wife would love it. Says, my wife wants the Infinity game board for the Batman Monopoly, but $500 is a lot to pay for Batman Monopoly. Indeed it is, and I'm betting you could get a Batman Monopoly off of eBay for a whole lot cheaper, and then you get the little metal pieces that you can keep for a collection or something. I actually have quite a few silly Monopolies, whether it's the Mario one or I have a couple different Star Wars ones, and I have, speaking of football, I have the Super Bowl 32 Broncos versus the Packers Monopoly. And then Zeta Redux says, notice how they placed Morph on the cab, overshadowing Wolverine, not to be denied. Indeed, indeed. And it will be interesting to see how they modify their relationship in this season. In the original cartoon, right? They Morph and Wolverine are buddies, but it's more like the Morph character is comedic and their relationship is more of ball busting, right? Typical guy friendship stuff like Michael B and Nostalgia, just cracking shit on each other. Clearly the current showrunner has different idea in mind, so it'll be interesting to see how that relationship is evolved for Disney Plus's modern audience. We'll have to wait and see. And then Jim the Pacers fan says ThinkUp's website has their past A1up work on it with the Infinity in-cap renders at several retailers. I don't remember seeing them in stores. Yeah, I don't think I've seen an Infinity game board. Well, I know I take that back. They have them at Nebraska Furniture Mart. I don't think I've seen them anywhere else. I don't know if Danny's still here. Do they sell the Infinity game board or table at A1 or at Best Buy, or is it only online? I don't think I've ever seen it in other retailers. It's certainly not at Walmart or Target or anything that I've ever seen. Anyway, so let's jump into this video I wanted to share. And before I get into that, I'm hoping you guys can confirm. Okay, so yeah, he says it's definitely in store at Best Buy. So good to know. So I'm going to share this video and I want you guys to tell me if you can actually hear the audio once I click play here. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Actually, I didn't even bother checking to see if I like a doofus. Didn't even check to see if I enabled the audio. Okay, it does say enabled. All right, so if you can see that, let me know if you can hear it.
So, unfortunately,
that sucks. That's
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we'll go on to the next one. It's going to be arcade systems are making a comeback.
Arcades are making.
Were you guys able to? Whoa! Were you guys able to hear that? Give me a 1 or something in the chat to let me know you could hear the audio from that. Perfect. All right. I'm going to start it over just a bit. And the question was they're talking about specifically arcades, and you think they are growing in popularity.
We'll go on to the next one. It's going to be arcade systems are making a comeback.
Arcades are making. Well,
agree or disagree?
I mean, you got 1-ups now.
You got.
So if you guys don't know,
they are.
This is Riff and Ricky from Pixel Game Squad. On the far left is Curtis. He's a guy that's joined them more recently. On the other side of the room is Chris, who owns a couple video game stores. And together, him and Riff have purchased the SoCal Gaming Expo. And one of their friends, who is another, resells and purchases video games, anime, t-shirts and stuff. He's a reseller. But this is their podcast called Pixel Podcast, if you're not aware of them. But specifically now Arcade1up is mentioned.
I'm gonna say no, and everyone else says yes.
That's fine.
I feel like I heard a lot of talk about arcades like 3 or 4 years ago. I'm just going off literally by what I've just heard people talking about. I just feel like I heard a lot of talk around arcades like 3-4 years ago, and then I haven't in the last year and a half. I feel like it's just like I haven't heard anyone talk about Arcade1up or I'm modding this, or I just feel like the conversations, maybe because we bought a couple 3-4 years ago, a lot of people talk about it around us and the conversation just kind of died. So I don't know if that's actually what the market's doing, but maybe you guys can.
No, I kind of agree with that too. There was a big hype, like there was so many barcades being opened up everywhere, and then there was the big Arcade1up hype. Most recently, I was reading about them that they were kind of struggling. They came out with like a casino game, right?
Arcade1up did?
Yeah, they have like a Wheel of Fortune, and then it has like slots on it too.
Oh, dude, they put on the U.S.'s gambling addiction.
Wow.
And then they came out with like a tabletop board game, I think.
What?
Like where you can play like 300 board games, like on like a table.
But it's electronic?
It's electronic.
Oh, that's
which is a cool idea.
Yeah.
But my guess is that
Blake's like crap, garbage.
My guess is that either, obviously they have some licensing, relationships, but they might have ran out of all the big titles like the X-Men's, the Turtles, the Simpsons, and then you start diving into like more obscure stuff, right? And I don't know if the market would be there for the more obscure stuff.
More obscure stuff is cool, and we would probably like the more obscure stuff, but you're not going to sell to the general market of 40-year-old men who don't play games anymore, but they walk by and go, ooh, Pac-Man, and they buy it. You're going to lose those people.
Yes.
Because I feel like that's where a lot of the big sales were.
Right.
The Walmarts.
Yeah. The
regular
huge,
dudes. Because I can't tell you how many, a few years ago, like I said, going to, meet one of my kids' friends from school, and I go to their house to pick them up, and the dad's like, hey, yeah, I got a Street Fighter 1-up back there. That's cool, but they're not necessarily a gamer. So like you said, I feel like if you're going to get into some of those, I don't know, what are some of the lesser loved titles?
They're for like man caves is what it's for.
I must have 12 Arcade1ups in my house.
Do you?
Oh yeah.
That's right. You do. I
do
forgot
have
about
I have
that.
a lot.
What's
My
your favorite
family
one?
loves them.
What's your favorite one?
Oh, it's got to be Terminator. Judgment Day.
nice.
That's the gun
Awesome.
one, right?
Yeah, the gun has kickback to it too. It's really cool.
I was gonna say, how is the gun one?
It's good. It's really good. They're like, they feel light. Obviously, they're a lot lighter than the one.
So I think it's interesting. Again, if you guys don't know these guys, it's the Pixel Game Squad. Before that, they were the NES Pursuit. They've been in the home arcade, or sorry, in the retro video game space forever. Their big shtick is going out to the Golden West swap meet in Los Angeles. They go every weekend. They go with a group of friends, and they just find. I mean, it's insane the amount of stuff they find out there. One of their big connections they made out there is one of the people from Storage Wars. So, he obviously gets lots of storage lockers and he hooks them up a lot of the times with what he finds. But they get a lot of finds and see a lot of interesting stuff, right? So you're not going to see a whole lot of Arcade1up in a swap meet, but it is interesting to hear their kind of feedback on what they hear of Arcade1up. And of course, Blake here obviously has a sizable collection with his parents, and he talks a little more about that, which is pretty interesting.
Ones at the arcade,
They will
but
kill your back.
yeah, it's really fun.
I love that the
Really
youngest
good.
one here is like the full arcade guy. I love
Yeah,
that.
my family loves buying them too. I think we have 3 more on the way or
Nice.
something. I think my mom
Awesome.
got Dig Dug. I think she got the Killer Instinct one,
Wow.
and then
I love Killer Instinct.
I think she got the Turtles one. If I'm
The 4-player one.
The Toidles.
Dang.
Nice.
There is a new company. The only thing I've seen most recently is there's a company.
And so now Chris is going to turn to Unico here, which I think is interesting. He makes a comment about Unico being based in Kansas City. Now I know they came up for the they were a sponsor at KC Retro earlier late last year in December. I also know they do definitely have a warehouse in the area, at least within driving distance, but I'm not 100% sure they're actually headquartered here. If they are, man, Jim, you need to invite me out to the warehouse or to the headquarters so we can do an interview. I'd love to talk to you guys and see what you got going on, man. But
Company called Unico. I think it's UNICO.
Huh?
And they created candy cabs similar to like what Arcade1up has done.
Which is a
Yeah.
style of cab.
Yeah, they're like the Japanese.
yeah, goofy. But his
They don't come
parents are
preloaded with
definitely,
games, but they're
more our
basically in the
age.
style. And I think you can insert like an SD card. I'm not sure on all that, but those are pretty awesome. Those just dropped like last month.
I
Did
still
you
need to
see
get
it?
one of the no.
They look pretty sick. Have you seen them though?
I think I know. Is it the one they kind of look like Astro City one?
So of course he's a little off there. He's seen the videos, and keep in mind that this conversation only they released this video earlier today, but was actually filmed. I believe this was filmed in January, early January, if I'm not mistaken. So they're not out. He obviously heard the story about them, not enough to really know enough about the candy cab, but knew that it was up for pre-order. And so that's, I think, what he's referring to.
Ones?
Yeah,
Yes.
I need an Astro City one.
Yep.
they look exactly like
Yeah.
Astro Cities. They're pretty awesome looking.
I
We were
just-
trying to get them to SoCal. Actually, we reached out to them.
No, we're back.
They're in
This is-
Kansas.
This is your chance.
Yeah.
They're in Kansas City, so it's a long way for them.
Wow.
But they were interested.
I just
Awesome.
I just sold an
Yeah.
Arcade1up yesterday, funny enough. But the guy, shout out, his name's Freddie, he watches the podcast. Funny
Yeah.
enough, literally I had on OfferUp, I had an Arcade1up, and I'm responding to the guy, and he's like, random question. You kind of talk like this guy Riff. And I was like, oh, that's me. So he might help me out with like a mod. I might get one modded. Do you have any modded of them?
No.
You just
No.
play them straight.
You know what? One of mine never worked. I still haven't gotten a replace.
Which one
My
is it?
Buck Hunter. I got a Buck Hunter one. Never worked out of the box.
That's a
Oh.
fun
Set it-
game.
Yeah. I was so disappointed. The guns would not calibrate, and I contacted them, and like I always forget to respond like back to emails, and they're like, "Oh, like you can return it." But that was like 6 months ago. So
That's always the bummer about stuff like that. It's like, no, you can return it, no worries. But that's where they get you because 90% of people aren't going to want to put an Arcade1up back in a box and somehow and get all this.
oh my god, the shipping on that thing must be so expensive.
Yeah.
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 Hopefully they would cover it, but again, even just the work of putting it back,
Put it back in a
you almost feel like,
box,
hey,
yeah.
pay me for my time if I do that.
Now
And give me
you,
it.
Chris, you have like older arcades. How difficult is it to find somebody that knows how to work on the mechanics of those things?
Arcade machines are actually pretty simple machines, like the older ones. You really only have like 4 pieces to them. You have a CRT TV, you have the boards, you have a power supply, and then you have the chassis, which basically connects from the board to the back of the CRT. They're big, they look like there's a lot in there, but there's really only 4 pieces, so they're not too difficult. But as far as like changing out chassis is a real pain, changing out monitors is a real pain. Power supply is not too difficult, boards are pretty easy. But like pinball machines, oh my gosh, forget it. They are like,
I saw you on your story the other day. You were
I
working on
fixed
one.
that Street Fighter 2 pin. I know, I got the car. There's a car smash.
All right, so this is the part where all you pinball heads should pay attention. Tell me if these guys like clearly they know some stuff, but it's very surface level about Arcade1up and some of the arcade space. But Chris here's going to talk a little bit about pinball, and me not being a huge pinball fan myself, I have no point of comparison here. But he talks about some of his favorite games, and one in particular that I found interesting because I've never really heard that in somebody's list as a killer one.
Smash feature in the Street Fighter 2 pin.
pinball.
How many
Yeah.
hours did you put on? I forgot what it said.
Oh my gosh, I was working. I started at 9 in the morning, and I think I got it working by like 5 or 6 in the afternoon. I dedicated my whole day to that. It was actually pretty fun working on that pinball machine.
Wow.
I am as basic as it gets with pinball machines, and miraculously, you were there when I bought the thing.
What'd you pay?
3,500. Yep. But it's there was only 2 video game pinball machines. There was a Mario and there was a Street
Who made
Fighter.
it? Gottlieb?
Gottlieb made both.
Mm.
Yeah.
Dang.
You could rack your brain trying to think of another video game pinball machine. There's none.
Wow.
None ever came out.
What's your favorite
The-
pinball machine?
Black Knight 2000.
Mine's Twilight Zone.
Twilight Zone's good too. Yeah,
Dang.
Black Knight 2000. You like music. Check out Black Knight 2000 sometime.
That's sick.
Oh, it has the best audio of any pin
Really?
ever. It is
Oh.
so good. That's why I love it.
Audio and pinball machines are so
Oh, the
fun.
audio is the best ever.
Wow.
All right, guys. If you guys haven't got your tickets,
All righty, so that is the extent of what I wanted to show you with those guys. And good point, Zero. There is a Qbert pinball machine, and of course, there's lots of video game based virtual pins, but I don't know that was really what he was talking about. If you guys get a chance to watch them, this particular clip came from the Pixel podcast, which you can find over on Pixel Plus. And of course, their main channel is the Pixel Game Squad. And if you give them a subscribe and you're not already subscribed to them, tell them that I sent you over there. Great guys. It's really fun. They're truly good guys. It's just always positive, lots of fun. It's right up PD7's alley. It's basically their main channel is walk and talks out at the swap meet, and they show you what they pick up. Sometimes they'll go get bigger collections. If you don't know who Riff is, Aaron, he's the editor for Retro Rick. He's the editor for Phoenix Resale. He also edits for at least one other person. He is, he's gotten a ton of people into the retro video game YouTube space, like Mort's Garage, Gabbo. Huge guy. I'm actually planning on, if I have the opportunity, heading out to the SoCal Gaming Expo. It's their first year, and pretty much the who's who of retro video game hunting and reselling is going to be out there, so it should be a lot of fun. I know a couple guys from the Kansas City area that have the YouTube channels are planning on going out there, so it should be a blast. But check them out; they're pretty awesome. Other than that, those are the 2 main things I wanted to share with you guys tonight. So I'll just leave it at that. And I want to thank everybody for stopping by. And Paul says, who knows, maybe the Infinity Game Board will be like Porsche SUVs saving the 911 or the Porsche 911, and nobody wants it, but it lets them make the good stuff. I certainly hope so, but if the first hint of what it lets them make is the X-Men 97 MVC2, yeah, I don't think so. So again, thanks everybody dropping by. Thank you, Jim the Pacers fan, PD7, everybody, Goofyfoot, Zero, Cornercade, Thumper, Jason as always, who's the king of moderation. I guess in more ways than one. King moderator, not king of moderation. Jim the Pacers fan, Carl O, Thor KC, C North, and everybody else I missed. Until next time, Brooklyn Menace, skipped over him. Don't want to miss him. Until next time, have fun.